The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Good evening and welcome to my State of Mind. I am Dan Yorke. Midway through the first week of school, lots of thoughts from a lot of different places. Tonight we'll talk with Erika Sanzi, a good school hunting blog author. She is one of my go-to people for common sense on things like education. In the meantime, we're recording this program on Wednesday midday. The governor visited North Providence School on Monday to start the week off. 12 News reported it this way.
Are you excited?
A back to school for the history books.
First day of school. Let's make it a great year.
Governor Gina Raimondo greeting students in North Providence Monday as kids return to their classrooms for the first time since March. Raimondo has been bullish on getting students back behind their desks, and she's been met with pushback. On Friday, a judge denied an attempt by the Bristol Warren Teachers Union to stop schools from reopening. And now teachers in Providence are calling for a federal inspection of classrooms.
I have no problem with it. You know, if it makes them feel safer, then I say let's do it.
Of course, not all kids are back in the classroom, with some families choosing to continue with distance learning or opting to homeschool. Meanwhile, kids in 3 districts don't have a choice. Warwick, Pawtucket, and Cumberland all staying fully remote. Raimondo has been sharply critical of Warwick before and says Cumberland and Pawtucket are no different.
The kids in Cumberland and Pawtucket are gonna be worse off for not being in school, and I don't think it's fair.
Not thinking it's fair was the same argument made by student athletes rallying over the weekend. They want football and volleyball to be reinstated this fall. Raimondo says it's not happening.
It's a pandemic. I'm sad. I'm sad for them. I understand, but it's just not safe.
And so I revisit the education conversation for the first time in a long time with Erika Sanzi, the author of Good School Hunting, a former teacher and elected school committee member in Cumberland, and she's involved in everything. So the educational prowess and literary involvement is lengthy. Reaction, Erika, welcome, by the way. Great to have you back on the program.
It's great to see you. I have missed you, and I am not just saying that. I truly mean that.
Yes, thank you. Same. Normalcy will return at some juncture here. When, I'm not exactly sure. The governor's remarks in the news package that we just ran continue to include a couple of things that puzzle me. First, don't worry about it. We got you taken care of. In other words, her idea is, you parents, just drop your kids off. You know, we've got this. You know, as my dad, God rest his soul, used to say, what's this we blank? So we'll talk about that in a second. But she continues to really troll, in a lot of ways, the Cumberland, Pawtucket, and any other school system that's not fully engaged. What is your take on the school opening process?
So I have really decided, as I look at it through the lens of a parent who has 3 children who need to be educated, and as I try to put my place in myself in the place of the leaders and those running schools, that this is an incredibly difficult situation and that everybody needs to have options. I am not nearly as frustrated with the governor as you. I don't hear your show every day, but I certainly have picked up on, you feeling annoyed and frustrated with some of the things that she's been saying, and I often lean a little bit more in her direction, in the sense that we are in an emergency, and to me, having children out of school is a crisis. It is not the same level of crisis for all kids by any stretch, and I'm certainly very amenable to conversations about triaging in ways if we have to, but it is a problem to have schools completely closed in districts, in my opinion. For in-person learning. To have no in-person learning going on in some of these districts, to me, is a major problem.
Well, no kidding.
Like an unacceptable problem.
Well, no kidding.
Well, okay. All I'm saying is that there are sides to this, right? And I am more on the side of, you do the best you can. Parents make their decisions based on the information that they have. They keep their kids home if they'd like, but for those who desperately believe their kids need to be in school, including every single pediatrician I have spoken to personally, including my own. There needs to be, school buildings need to be open for the kids who need to be in them.
Yeah, but do you ask the pediatrician about the air quality flow in those school buildings? This is not about, you know, my criticisms are not about the idea that we ought to be. I mean, the notion that anybody would think that anybody should think that we shouldn't do everything we can to get the kids back in school full time is puzzling to me. What I've been miffed about is the organizational approach and the clear and the clear process that needed to be engaged here in order to make it happen. You and I have long talked about the facilities in this state, which are decrepit. We have let the infrastructure of schools fall down everywhere. And there was no secret here, from Providence with the Johns Hopkins report all the way to schools that allegedly are kind of brand newish in Cumberland, say, with the 2010 project in the high school that left half the building without the right ventilation system. We are woefully structurally behind. And if we've got COVID-19 money at $1.25 billion instructed for two major things, business stimulation in schools, and we're holding that money back, and we're not organized to be able to say aggressively to every district, tell me your HVAC issues, we're going to shove the money in there and get that thing fixed. That should have happened in March, April, May, June, July, August. It hasn't even happened yet. That's my only concern. You know,
I think you and I are mostly on the same page. I mean, one thing I don't understand is how all of a sudden at the end of the summer, people are scrambling to do things. Part of this issue, in my opinion, is that the school calendar doesn't work for this, right? Because at the time that we needed all hands on deck, most people were off for summer break. And that left a huge gap. And I also think that a lot of people were living in this, you know, way of thinking that, oh, once we get to September, things are going to be normal again. But that being said, the schools were in a decrepit condition long before COVID-19.
Right.
I personally, as a parent, having talked to environmental engineers and people who specialize in this stuff, I, for my family, do not feel that it is too dangerous to send my children back into the Cumberland schools. But I understand why somebody else might. And if you look, you know, my understanding, for example, in Cumberland is that despite whatever the union rep is saying, they have 70% of their teachers clamoring to go back into these buildings. So again, so the pediatricians do not talk about the air quality, but the people who know air quality and study air quality do. And they say these buildings are never going to be COVID-19 compliant because they're not hospitals. They're not built to be able to ever meet that threshold. That being said, the lack of maintenance, which is not new, the unwillingness or oversight, or just, in my opinion, culture of low expectations around building maintenance, you know, obviously has us in a place right now that is bad, but it's not any worse than it ever was before.
But we've never had a pandemic with a transmissible virus that the likes of which has wreaked this havoc / worry, and the latter of, if it hits you and you're the wrong person, good night, Irene. I mean, we haven't had that. And by the way, you know, I don't care how many I speak to and how many you speak to in the HVAC world who say, well, listen, they're not hospitals, they're never going to be. The governor's own prescription through the Department of Health for what a building needs with the minimum airflow necessary is the criteria that I'm using. In terms of
that's fair.
So she establishes the criteria for what the airflow needs to be in the schools. None of the districts can, very few of the districts can make it, at least in most of their own schools. They say, sorry, Gov, we can't abide by your rules. So we're going to hold off until maybe we can, maybe we get the money to do it, and maybe the virus subsides. And she chastises them for not putting the kids in the schools when they're actually, you know, working to her specs. I mean,
No, that's all fair. Listen, that's all fair. And honestly, when it comes to like what the regs, what were the regs, and then they got changed, and the dates were, I'm not as in those weeds as you. So that's all fair. And personally, constantly calling out Warwick and the superintendent of Warwick, I don't think that's right. I don't think it's productive. I don't think it helps anybody. But on the other hand, if you look at ventilation in the list of concerns around transmission, right? Like if there wasn't going to be mask wearing, that would be a different conversation, right? If there wasn't going to be a reduced number of students, if there wasn't going to be, hand sanitation available everywhere, again, that would be a different thing for me. But I don't think it's necessarily fair it has seemed to me that the argument becomes, oh, you don't care about air quality? You're okay with kids and teachers going back? I guess you want people to die. And that's the rhetoric that I'm like, and you're not saying that. I know you're not saying that, Dan. But if you go on any parent Facebook page or any, one of these like groups, or you have, the people on Twitter and on social media, which I know you don't like, but the point is, that rhetoric is also unhelpful, right? Nobody who wants their kid to go back to school is saying it because they want teachers and children to die or for anything bad to happen to them.
Yeah. Again,
so we need to. All I'm saying is bring the temperature down. Now.
Yeah, right. Well, get the hell off social media, and the temperature comes down. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the general population deciding how they think about it based on the rolling electronic digital hearsay that goes on and is unhealthy. We'll take a break and regroup on this, because there are a couple of really educational thoughts here that Erika has recently written about that I want to touch base on because I find them fascinating. First week of school, we're struggling through it. You're watching the show on Wednesday. We recorded it yesterday, so we've missed the governor's latest remarks formally in her press conference about this. But there's enough meat on this bone. We'll be right back with Erika Sanzi, author of Good School Hunting, a blog that you should read. Be right back. Welcome back to My State of Mind. Dan Yorke with Erika Sanzi. She is the author of Good School Hunting, that's a blog, by the way. She also writes in the Valley Breeze, shares space with me these days, and writes in national publications for education. She's a former educator herself and an elected school committee member in the town of Cumberland. And one of my go-to common sense people on education. So having said what we've said about the difficulties about getting this thing jump-started, what is your overall take, even with your own experience with 3 kids in 3 sets of educational platforms? You've got public, charter, private. Do you have a sense of how parents and teachers can make this distance learning better?
So just a small clarification, my youngest is no longer in the charter. So now I've got 2 in the district and 1 in private, parochial. My oldest son is in a parochial high school that is doing a blended model. So he goes in 2 days this week and does 3 days online. And then next week he'll go in 3 days. And then my other 2 are all virtual. We're only, what's today? We're only 3 days in. So, and so far so good. I mean, in terms of, everybody's able to get online. People are understanding what they're supposed to do. I can't make any assessment yet as to, how much are they learning or how effective is it? But I'm grateful that it started, and I'm grateful that it's, that everybody's getting something. And I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with these schools that went back in person and did blended learning models, not only in Rhode Island, but nationally. So far, so good in terms of the fact that at the moment, we don't have reason to think that we're seeing, big spikes or big, spreading events with children back in buildings. But
Sure.
We'll see. And I say that, I have friends whose kids have been back in for about 3 weeks or a month in other parts of the country in person, and so far so good. And we'll just have to wait and see. And I certainly am not one of those people that feels like I know, because I feel like I have no idea. I'm humble. This virus has humbled me in terms of making predictions.
Well, prediction's one thing, but what's your evaluation of the quality of learning?
It's just too early for me. I mean, I can tell you that in the spring, we saw the most historic learning losses in the history of the United States. So there's certainly reason to be concerned. I can tell you that in some places in the country, they're seeing up to 40% of kids not logging on at all. But again, Rhode Island just started on Monday, so I don't have a lot to say other than people were frustrated on the first day, but they made it through. You know, some teachers offered parents question and answer sessions to help them figure out what was going on, because the number of links coming at you on email for parents, the schedule is not self-intuitive. When you look at it, you don't really know what the hell you're looking at. And so I think everyone is putting in their best effort, but I really think it's too early. I mean, we're just getting into a routine, you know, like my oldest has been to school one day, and all of my kids have been back 3 days. And right now I do have this incredibly quiet house with 3 kids all doing school online. But it's really too early for me to say. I mean, did I run into someone at the supermarket yesterday that was very frustrated that the kids only get 2 days a week of live instruction? And so she was frustrated that all of her kids' classes ended 15 minutes early. That's a red flag. But again, it's just too early, I think, now to know how this is all going to go.
Yeah, when we come back, we'll talk about the difference between live stream learning and here's your assignment. We'll check back with you tomorrow. I think that's the big worry about this learning process, you know, from home. We'll be right back with Erika Sanzi on My State of Mind. Stay with us. Erika Sanzi is the author of Good School Hunting, the blog that you should read on a regular basis. You know, I have to tell you that the thing that does concern me about this distance learning is consistency of effort amongst teachers. And, you know, my theory here was until we've got the buildings right, we should just go full-time distance learning, but send the teachers in. I mean, I'm worried about, you know, multiple people in these control groups being violated and all that kind of a thing. I would want to see, I'd want to see what we're doing. I would want to see a constant live access for kids to their teachers via, you know, the online streaming, where they've had a chance to visit the school, the kids, and then come back home, see the teachers, see the parents, especially the younger one. I mean, see this setting, and feel like they're at least virtually connected. We do have a lot of Wi-Fi problems, however. I mean, easier said than done. I had a caller to the radio show yesterday talk about how all the Wi-Fi was down because it couldn't be handled by the teachers who were trying to live stream. So again, structurally, we are not prepared for this and didn't do the work in the summer to be prepared for this. Having said that, you know, if you're recommending and you were on the school committee today and you wanted to send a message to teachers formally in this next couple of minutes, what would you say to them about what their professional effort should be here? Because a lot of them are entrepreneurializing what they're doing.
I mean, if I were on the school committee, I would hope that we would have talked about potentially finding ways for the master teacher, right, for the teacher who excels at instruction, to be able to teach larger numbers of kids, because online allows for that, and then to have other teachers that are able to be working more individually with kids online or in small groups, or, you know, help the kids, so that if the teacher who excels at teaching, whether it's fractions, quadratic equations, or talking about literature, the kid who just needs a little help in a one-on-one 30 seconds would make the difference, you know, that could happen. But we didn't do that. So, you know, the first thing I would tell the teachers is, thank you. I know this is hard. It's hard for everybody. And then I think I would say, one thing I would probably say is, are going to be moments where you want to err on the side of less instruction, because you feel like you're overwhelming kids, especially younger kids, right? So it's easy, and we're already seeing evidence of, you know, the kind of the pullback. I don't want to overload them. I don't want to overwhelm them. And I think what I would say is, like, do not err on the side of less instruction. Do not err on the side of lowering expectations, even if it's coming from a good place. In fact, I would say err on the side of too much instruction maybe, or at least, high expectations, give them as much as they can possibly get, because these learning losses are serious. And I think it's much easier to make adjustments when you're doing too much than it is when you're doing too little.
Bang. That's advice that we'll just leave on. We will continue the conversation with Erika, because this is going to be a very school-based program over the next many, many weeks and months, God knows, years. Erika Sanzi, the author of Good School Hunting, thank you for your perspective. Appreciate it.
Great to see you, Dan. Thanks.
Final word when we come back. Stay with us. Continue to keep tabs on the education scene. It is a fluid conversation, no doubt. In lieu of being able to create HVAC systems for these buildings, it's going to be a long slog here. So buckle down for it. Talk to you on the radio tomorrow at 3 and back here tomorrow night on My State of Mind. Thanks for watching. Good night.